Inside the halls of San Diego State University lies a program dedicated to storytelling and pursuing the truth. Welcome to Where You At, a podcast that takes you inside the work of alumni for the School of Journalism and Media Studies at San Diego State. Our goal is to show the success of our alumni, inspire students with the stories, and connect students and alums on a pathway to journalism success. And now, here's your host, Josh Suchon.
This week on the Where You At podcast, we're getting back to work. Summer is over. This podcast went on hiatus during the summertime, and now the fall semester has begun. Classes have started, and it's time to once again start bringing you a new episode of this podcast. For those of you who are new to this podcast, or for just a friendly reminder, let's take a few moments to remind you about what we're doing here. My name is Josh Suchon. I'm the host of the podcast. I'm from the class of 1996. I've done a lot of zigging and zagging in my career, working in newspapers and for baseball teams and for radio stations and writing books. I'm not exactly Woodward and Bernstein these days, but I still have a passion for journalism, and I still want to tell the stories of journalists. And I have a huge soft spot in my heart for student journalists, and I'm extremely proud of my school of San Diego State, and I wanted to share the stories of our alums who are making us proud. And I thought that the first semester went really well. We had a wide variety of guests from a lot of different fields, a lot of different age ranges. And the idea behind this podcast is let's highlight what alums have done. And then also for students, it's basically like having a guest speaker in your classroom, except that you can listen on your time when it's convenient. And hopefully you get inspired by it. Hopefully you can hear stories about what alums did when they were students, what they did on campus, the different steps that they took in order to get their first job and their second job, and any type of advice that they have. And so again, every Wednesday, we're going to have a different episode. We always love to hear recommendations for guests, and we're going to do a couple of different things with this year's podcast, but we're going to stick to the main format. In terms of this episode, we began last semester by talking to Temple Northrup. He is the head of the Journalism and Media Studies, and we wanted to kind of set the tone for introducing him and his vision for the school to let people know. And I really like the idea of starting with a faculty member. And so for this year, our guest is Noah Arceneaux. I got a chance to meet Noah when I was back on campus last year. He is an associate professor. His area of expertise is new media, media studies, radio, social media, the relationship between technology and culture, the social history of electronic communication from early radio to wireless delivery. And so without further ado, Noah, welcome to the Where You At podcast.
Hello. I know I'm tempted to say good morning, but people could be listening to this at any time of day. So whatever time it is where you are,
Exactly.
I'm a professor, been here since 2007, which actually makes me the old guy in the department. I am the old timer in the department. So I've been around for 17 years and seen a lot of growth and changes for the positive over that time. Yeah, I'm very excited to be, guesting on this podcast and getting ready for the new semester.
Yeah, Noah gave me some great ideas for guests, some of which appeared last semester and some of which will appear this upcoming semester. In terms of what you will be instructing, what are your classrooms? What are you teaching?
I have two what I'll consider large classes. One is quite large. It's sort of the intro to mass communication class, JMS 200, and it's kind of a very wide overview of the current state of the modern media industry, which itself is challenging to even define. We have a separate class, JMS 210, which is all about social media, which the students are very interested in, and that's a huge area in itself. I try to cover, I guess, what you'd call the legacy institutions: radio, television, film, newspapers, magazines. But I also have added in material on video games, which I consider to be a form of media. And, we don't go deep into everything, but just kind of expose the students to how the things work. And then I teach an upper division class about law and ethics, which we are cursed to live in interesting times. There's constantly something to do with First Amendment, freedom of expression. And that class is taught partially online, but we do meet with the students in groups of 25 to 30 for a face-to-face discussion once a week, because these issues are incredibly nuanced. And, students will say everyone should have freedom of expression, but if you wanted to wear an obscene shirt into Disney, Disney would have the right to say, no, you can't wear that shirt. So, when you present it like that, students see both sides of it. It's not necessarily a very clear-cut issue. But yeah, those are the two I'm teaching. And then in the spring, I'm also be teaching the same ones, but a class all about radio, which I'm very excited about. That's my passion for history is radio history. But the students will also be experimenting with podcasts and doing audio recording. I mean, podcasting is just a new form of delivery, but the form of presenting information purely through sound is, at least 100 years old, right? So I try and mix the old with the new in that class.
Okay, so let's start with, the JMS 200. For students who are new, if they're freshmen, or maybe they're just starting to take journalism classes after taking, more basic classes, or someone who's a high school junior, senior, thinking about San Diego State, what should students know about what it means to be a journalism major at San Diego State?
Well, I think, and I've noticed this with another academic organization that I'm in as well, that I think the term journalism, I don't know, I can't find a better term for it, but I think it can be a little limiting in people's minds. When they think journalist, they think someone hunched over a desk with a pencil and paper, taking notes for a printed product. But journalism is just spreading information, factual information, in a professional media outlet, whether that's social media, radio, or print, or some electronic version of print. So I think that's, at the organization I'm in, American Journalism Historians Association, I'm lobbying to say, let's include all forms of media. I saw a person at this conference give a history of DVRs, for example, which wouldn't think would fall in journalism. So anyway, back to the question at hand, I think the School of Journalism and Media Studies, we'll talk about the music industry and Taylor Swift's new concert and how the ticket sales are going, or crowdsourcing or Kickstarter, plus all forms of social media, plus things like newspapers and, being a watchdog and holding politicians accountable. So I think journalism it can be perceived to be a very limited term. We also have majors in advertising, public relations, and media studies, which people probably won't do traditional journalism, but they'll do something within the media. If you want to create professional media content and get paid for it, I think the School of JMS is a good place to be.
Yeah, one of the slogans for JMS is that we make storytellers, and storytellers are in all different types of forms. There's a lot of different forms, whether it's in 280 characters or whether it's a 280-minute movie, things like that. So I'm excited to hear about that, because it feels like an exciting time with all the different things going on, but also it can be a really overwhelming time because of all the different options that are available, both as a consumer and someone who's producing the content.
Yes. I think this was several years ago, but it's still stuck with me. Video games are clearly a form of electronic mass media. The industry makes hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. They employ writers and actors and directors and technicians. So there's that financial aspect of it. Plus, they are distributing information to people. There's news-based video games and advertising in video games. Okay, so the student says, okay, if video games are a form of media, what about board games? And then I was like, puzzled. I was like, oh, wow. If media studies includes video games, does it now have to include Monopoly, Sorry, Parcheesi? I can't think of an argument against it, other than you have to draw the line somewhere, other than, or the watch, an Apple Watch, which connects you to your text messages and can be used to make phone calls. We talk about smartphones, and one of the things I study is the history of mobile phones. Well, now the watch is a mobile phone. Does that mean now I should also study timepieces? Right? I mean,
Right.
Are timepieces a grandfather clock? Does that fit within the realm of media studies? It's hard to define what is and what isn't media.
What I like about this is just the idea that's the point of going to class and having these conversations. And somebody says something, no matter what your age is, whether you're the student or whether you're the teacher, and you make a good point. And so tell us about just the joy that you get from being in these discussions and these nuanced discussions with students as you try to figure out and define this.
The thing I've noticed, and I've been doing this for 17 years, is that students, they're smart. They wouldn't have got into San Diego State if they weren't smart, and they probably wouldn't have chosen our classes if they weren't smart, right? So they are intelligent people, but many of them believe that everyone on the planet thinks like they do. They'll say things like, for example, a printed newspaper. I'm old. We get the print newspaper every day. It's the Los Angeles Times, not the San Diego paper. I feel some guilt about that, but okay. I just find it more convenient to read the news over breakfast. I like having it spread out with my breakfast on it. And if I spill coffee on it, that's no big deal. I find that I discover stories that I would not seek out. I would not actively seek out on the website, right? Suddenly I'm reading about, I don't know, the Padres, who are terrible, but okay. But then next to it, there's an obituary for the man who created the Kalashnikov. I never would have gone out of my way to say who created the Kalashnikov, but now there's like a 10, 12-inch biography or obituary, and I'll read it. Anyway, point is, I like to read the print newspaper. Students will just automatically say things like, well, no one reads print, very confidently, because they don't. They consume all their news through their phone, through Snapchat, Instagram, whatever. So they assume no one in the world would actually prefer a printed newspaper. That's what I find interesting, is that when I say something to students, I was like, well, I actually read one. They're like, oh, this person does. So that's a good thing about going to college, to meeting people from other parts of the country, for other parts of the world, who you wouldn't interact with before, and discovering we're all human beings, and, everyone has similarities and differences.
What are some of the joys that you take when you see a student at whatever, freshman, sophomore, whatever, and especially if you have that student for multiple classes, but even if it's just one, and then you see them go off into the world and follow their dreams and being successful? Tell us about the joy that you take as a professor.
I am a parent. I have one child, and I think it's a very similar kind of like parental pride that you feel. I had a former student, I had her for 2 semesters. I used to teach classes in a sequence where I would see students for a year, like 2 semesters in a row. And this student, Danielle, all she wanted to do was work at the alternative radio station in San Diego. And I tried to say, open your mind a little bit, you want to work in radio. That's a challenging field to begin with, but you only want to work for one radio station. That's kind of limiting. She proved me wrong. And I hear her on the radio frequently. I listen to that station 91X quite often, and I'll hear her doing a commercial at some different part of the day, and it does make me smile. I was like, I think, well, Danielle did it. She did it. It also is just a reminder to me that I don't know everything. I'm being skeptical. I'm trying to be a little, wet blanket here. Open your mind. Maybe you won't work at 91X. No, she did it. So yeah, it definitely makes me feel good. Or some other students who, I won't give their names. Let's say they're not the most academically gifted student. Okay. They don't have this outstanding GPA, but then a year later, I'm on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and I see a social media post. That student is now an on-air correspondent in some small market. And that makes me feel great. I was like, oh my God, they did it. I'm so glad she did it. I'm so glad he did it. And I think what I've learned from life, not just from being a professor, persistence is the key to success. Whatever you want to do, keep doing it. If you're passionate about it, keep doing it. Your first efforts might not be successful, but your 10th might be successful. And if you want to work in some aspect of the media industry, being employed is better than not being employed. So even if it's just being a gopher, a PA, a behind the scenes, whatever, you'll be in the room, you'll find out about opportunities, you'll learn how the way the newsroom operates or the media organization operates, and then you'll work your way up. I mean, I had a job many years ago. I have to think about it. Was it pre-internet? Internet was just out. Internet was late 90s, so internet was just out. My job was to stand by a Xerox. This was at ABC News in New York, ABC National News, right? They have news that comes on at 9 in the morning. No, I think it started at 7 a.m. That's when they were doing hard news breaks in Good Morning America. Anyway, I had to stand by the Xerox machine. The script for the newscast would come out and it would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, the page number in the corner. I would have to rewrite the page number with a Sharpie, extra big, and then Xerox that. And then we'd run around to the prompter, to the newsroom, to the anchor. It felt incredibly old-fashioned to give them the script. And I would say, why do I have to rewrite 1 if it already says 1? Well, the people in the control room, the lights are dark, they're old, they got glasses, they can't see. So they want a giant one. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I went to college, I got a journalism degree for this. I mean, this is like a kindergarten task. Rewrite the number in a larger version on Sharpie. But that's what I did. That's what I did. That was my job. And the one time I messed up, it was terrible. I put a 7 on a page 1. But anyway, like I did it, and now I work my way up. Now I'm a professor. So just, if you're given a job, don't think it's beneath you, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And those are kind of the stories that we like to tell on this podcast, is sort of, how the sausage gets made. And one thing that we'll continue to do on this podcast this semester is just kind of give the overview and the basics of how people got their jobs and what they did at State and the different people that they met. But one of the things I'm excited about doing this semester is going into more detail about what it's really like to work on a project, what it's really like to work on a story. That's not just a one-day story. That is day after day after day and month after month. And then 3 years later still becomes like a big story, and what that means to like really pursue an in-depth story. And so I'm excited about that. For alums who are listening to this podcast, Noah, what are things that alums should know about just what's happening at JMS and maybe how they can help in some way, either you or other students?
I know we have a pretty active social media. I mean, Temple's been very good about increasing that. So I think people should follow. I know there's a Facebook group for alums, and I know there's a Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter. X.
Yeah, me too.
Twitter. And I'm pretty sure there's Instagram as well.
Yes, there is.
But I think if people follow the school on social media channels, they'll find out about the different things that are doing. Temple's doing a lot of activities. We're bringing in former students, graduates, to sort of be guest speakers or for sort of networking events. But I think those are going on periodically. One thing that we changed locations physically. So people who may remember SDSU campus, we're in a different building now. We're in a building called Adams Humanities. That happened 4 or 5 years ago. Now there's positives and negatives to the change. Okay. But there's a courtyard, a big public courtyard, which our department and 2 other departments on the floor use. But that's something we did not have in the old PSFA building. Was like a public space to have, ice cream in the afternoon or anything like that, sort of an outdoor picnic kind of thing. So that's really nice. And I think if people get a chance to come back to campus, they might like that physical space we have now.
I can also let people know that for the homecoming football game, JMS is going to be hosting a tailgate as well. I know that I'm making plans to go out there. It's early November. I'm pretty sure it's the game against Utah State in early November. So there'll be a tailgate. We might even do this podcast live, or we might record some episodes of the podcast or do some other fun things like that. Okay. So mark that on people's calendars as well. Okay, you spent the summer working on some research about Cajun radio. Let's wrap up this podcast by what did you learn? Why do you have an interest, first of all? And what did you learn about Cajun radio?
Well, I could talk for hours about this, probably at great length. My family background is from Louisiana. My last name is very distinctive. It's not just French, it's a very Louisiana French name. But I didn't grow up in Southern Louisiana. My father was in the Air Force. So I have this, insider outsider connection to the region. There are a number of radio stations, at least half dozen that still broadcast in French. And it's not that people don't speak English. That ended 50, 60 years ago. Everyone speaks English. But they still speak French because their grandparents spoke French, and it's kind of like ethnic pride. That's what I would say. Or, 3 stations do the rosary in French in the morning, like really early, like 5:30 in the morning, because people who Cajuns are very Catholic, notoriously very Catholic. You probably heard your mother or your grandmother or your great grandmother. That's the way they did the rosary. So I think it's really cool they still do that. So I was meeting with people at different radio stations, asking them why they do that, trying to document that. And what I really love about it, that is my background, is that mass media is being used to encourage and celebrate this particular ethnic difference. Mass media is not this homogenizing force, making us all bland white Americans, that everyone has little different ethnicities. And this one is being celebrated. And I just think it's really cool that they do that. Mostly it's music. Most of the French language is associated with Cajun music. And Zydeco music, and the announcers will sometimes speak French in between the songs. So that's what I was there doing, driving around. It was super hot, but there's no classes in the summer, so that was the time that I could go. There is one bar that I love I just find it so cool that this kind of like slice of old world Americana still exists. The bar only opens on Saturdays. It's a very small town, super small town, Mamu. At 9 in the morning, there's a live Cajun band with accordion and the fiddles, and it's broadcast over the radio. It's broadcast over the radio, and people come from all over. I mean, it's like a local attraction. And then by 1 o'clock, the music is gone and the bar closes up. They've made their money for the week, but they've been doing that since 1962.
Wow.
They stopped for about a year during the pandemic, but I just think it's kind of amazing that they're broadcasting live Cajun music out of this bar on Saturday mornings. They used to do all the announcing in French. Now the announcer, who I did meet, the announcer does most of it in English, but the announcers famously would stand up and read from the local newspaper. Here's the price of pork chops. Shrimp is this much. Here's the price of boudin. Boudin is a kind of spicy sausage. They would just read from the local grocery store. And I thought that's a slice of local color. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that things like that still exist in the world.
That is very cool. I love it. I like when those old types of things don't completely go away, even if they're really hard to find.
There's one other thing you could.
Yes.
Artificial intelligence is something that the whole school is trying to deal with right now.
Okay.
AI is affecting every industry. It seems to be impacting the different media industries very, very quicker than I think most of us maybe foresaw that it happening. As of this recording, we have this big strike going on in Los Angeles with the actors and the writers. Part of that strike is about AI, but it's affecting, journalism as well. People wanting to use AI to write news stories. And we're trying to, when we have our big faculty meeting on Friday, our big faculty retreat, I think we're going to have a discussion about how we deal with AI in the classroom. One extreme position would be absolutely not, never can be used. It's cheating. Can't use it. We'll fail you. Whatever, But then we use spell check, right?
Right.
I use spell check. And if I'm driving to some location that I've never been before, maybe it's to interview a source, I would use GPS. That's got artificial intelligence in it. So I think we have to identify how it can be used ethically, what it can be used appropriately for, and to use it properly. So I don't think we want to ban AI entirely from our classes, but it just feels a little weird if you have to write a 3,000, well, that'd be too big, say 1,000-word essay. If AI did that for you entirely, well, that is cheating. But I mean, we're trying to find out what's the right balance. Because when people graduate and go out in the world, if there's a tool that will help you write the news story faster, I think people are going to do it. And we'd be silly to just say, don't ever touch it. It's like telling kids, don't ever drink alcohol. Don't drink alcohol. Well, they're going to drink alcohol. I mean, it's just the world. So how do you make that safe and possible and create the right opportunity to do that? So yeah, I'm looking forward to that discussion on Friday about how do we deal with AI.
A quick note about that. When it comes to transcribing interviews, that's probably the number one thing that I hated the most as a newspaper reporter, and especially when I was doing lots and lots of interviews for books. And there was a part of me that just thought, I'm just going to pay someone to do this. And then I thought, no, I should listen back to my own interviews so that I can critique myself and so that I make sure that I get it right. And now there's technology that'll just transcribe it for you. Now you have to be careful. You have to go back because sometimes it's going to miss something. It's not going to completely pick something up when someone doesn't enunciate completely. But it saves so much time. And that's time that I can spend on my article, it's more time that I can spend interviewing more people. If I'm not spending, for every 1 minute of an interview, it's at least 3 minutes to transcribe it. And so that's another form of AI.
Yes. I know we have a class this fall. It's in the advertising area about advertising and AI and analytic strategy, something like that. But I think we'll have to incorporate that into other classes as well, as this is another tool at your disposal. The ethic component, because the class I teach about law and ethics, that one I think, people sometimes think that, robots are omniscient, they know everything and they're totally objective. Well, no robot or the algorithm is programmed by a human being, clearly. So I think we have to be concerned. Don't just give too much faith in, that machine's going to do it properly. A video clip that I've used in class several times, which really makes the point better than I could verbally, was some machine that would automatically dispense soap when you put your hand underneath it. Whoever was making this machine somehow didn't factor in the range of skin tones in the world. And if you have a very dark skin tone, the machine would not turn on. And that's what the video shows. That a black man puts a white piece of paper in his hand and the soap comes out. When his hand doesn't have the piece of paper, the soap doesn't come out. Whoever made that machine probably thought they were doing, it's going to save effort. It's going to be more hygienic. You don't have to touch it. It's going to be wonderful. Not realizing they're, disenfranchising a huge part of the population. But that just reflects that, they didn't have diversity in the design group, and no one had the sense to think, hey, does this work for every kind of human being on the planet? But anyway, I think that we need to be concerned about AI, just to say, oh, AI is going to write the news story. It's going to write the sports story. It's going to write the stock market earnings report, very automated kind of things. Don't just assume that's going to do that without bias, because someone built that.
Well, it's all fascinating stuff, Noah, and I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the other faculty members and for the students as they continue to tackle these things. We'll wrap up the podcast here, but it was great meeting you last semester. Okay. I look forward to seeing you again sometime, and continue to make great storytellers with the students that you have in class.
All right. Well, keep up the good work. I think this podcast is a great vehicle, a great venue, to get information out and hopefully stimulate some new minds to come to the School of Journalism and Media Studies.
Once again, that is Noah Arceneaux. My name is Josh Suchon. I'm your host. Thanks for listening. Every Wednesday, we'll have a new episode of the Where You At podcast. We're back at it here for the fall 2023 semester. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks for listening to the Where You At podcast. This is Devin Watley from the class of 2021. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know where you're at. Tell us about your career. Get involved in the school. There's many ways you can do this, from donating your time or money, mentoring students, to even speaking in classrooms in person or on Zoom. Your work can help us grow the program and create more opportunities for our students to succeed. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs.